How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Elder Gonzalez again, exactly, exploring the enterprise UI development. And as a way to make a quick recap of how do we get here, because in today's video we're going to explore now at Playwright. Okay, so what is Playwright and how now that integrate to the entire enterprise UI development. So to recap, okay, because the end goal of this course, and also as you as someone that's going to provide now your service to any company, enterprise company, big company, is to make those applications easy to maintain, right? So the industry right now, when it comes to maintainability, which is the ability to add, change, do a refactor, or run a migration without the fear of breaking something, it has now their own systems in place. So Steve Kenney, which is the head front-end engineer at Temporal, now he is one of the he made this particular course where he put now this Maslow of pyramid, which is the pyramid of needs, right? So at the bottom we look at the systems, then on top of that the process, and last but not least is the patterns. So why am I mentioning this? Since the goal is, at least for this course, is to see what are the infrastructure that we need to put in place as a way to make all of this enterprise UI development easy to go with as a developers, and also for the company, by looking at these particular layers, which is this one. Let me show you quickly that, like this. So on the system, as you can see here, yep. So on the systems, So on the systems here, we look at the testing, the build, and static analysis, and then on top of that is what are the things that we need to do as a way to guarantee that, which is the design process, the code review, the code review, design documents and blueprints, and then on top of that, which is once you know what are the process, what are the stuff that you need to do, the know-how, then what are the stuff that are recurrently or that occur often. Okay, so for example, what are the patterns that happen and how can we now deal with this? So for example, state management, or the architecture, or abstractions. So in terms of architecture, is that how we're going to organize our applications in a way that make it easy to test, easy to maintain, right? And that is the clean architecture or the hexagon architecture. Again, all of this stuff has been already done for you, but you just implement in your code base. Another point of pattern is the abstraction, is that what are the tools that we're going to use as a way to, for example, deal with the concurrency in our applications. Hey, we have now promise, we have generators, iterators, as well as the observables, all right? And what are the use case for each one of them? And for state management is as a way of how we're going to now handle that. All of these topics are just part of these foundations. So because of that, we went through describe is the unit testing, or the testing, which is, after all, when we zoom in, it's made of the, and it's as a spectrum, okay, like this, what it is. You got it? Okay, so the spectrum, you got it. So the spectrum of testing, which is from unit, component, and E to E. We look at the unit, how can we run our unit, why we're using Jest as a JavaScript testing framework, what are the greatest hits of method of going with this library, what is the value proposition of this testing, okay, which is test that a particular function do what it's supposed to do, And the methods to do that are, hey, to be, for example, hey, I want to now check if these values actually, this primitive or object actually have the same reference in memory, or to equal, to check if the object property structure is the same that the another one, right? So once you pass this through a function, hey, do you get this stuff done? And to be close, to contain, to be throw, to match objects, to expect.any when you want to check the type, the value, the expect dot array containing, object containing, and also how can we now set up a testing, at least right now, by putting is the test and then the logic, and then right below is the assertions. So all of this is just to actually now allow us to is write this kind of application to get a little bit much more confidence. So once you wrote your test and then we deploy that into a development branch, we use now is the CI/CD process, especially using now GitHub Actions that allows to define is these workflows where you can put is all of these different pipelines that need to be executed. So for example, build, test, and code coverage. We look at how can we do that, how can we define all of these jobs inside of our workflow that by default run in parallel, and then they now make you, so all of these jobs are running into a running, not pun intended. And these runners have, so GitHub provide you now these virtual machines of that is running on whether it's a Mac or Windows or Linux, that allow you to run these particularly bash scripts or GitHub Actions, which is just recurring, tedious, monotonous, and complex task that is, so for example, is pulling the repo into this runner, or set up a build tool process for your dev environment. This is useful for React Native applications, as well as setting up authentication with third-party vendors to verify that that actually is working as expected. And then once we wrote this unit and build process, because anytime we make a PR or you submit your change to the development branch, okay, to be evaluated by other people, code peer review. Now, from there, we look at how can we now speed up the process by catching dependency. So in other words, if this, so if the dependency inside of this runner or inside of this virtual machine hasn't changed, we just want to run is now the, so we don't want to install the dependency, we just want to run is now the build process and the, or the tests, right? Because behind the scenes, we're running is this workflows from the scratch. Okay, we're doing is a clean install. We're just doing that over and over and over. Now, here is when you want to submit your change to that branch. So the owner of this repo needs to put in place a certain rules to guarantee now that not everybody can merge changes here or submit changes here, and also guarantee the security and also the compliance. So this is why we look briefly, and that was beyond the scope of today's video. This is beyond the scope of today's video and this course, but we look at that as a way to understand why the IT security and compliance is important and how they merge that in our entire workflow. as a way to understand this narrative around. Now, with the IT security models, we have now, I just briefly mentioned that, all right? In the IT security model, we have now the castle and moat, which is the way of how now some companies that they don't have the migrations to more secure models. And the castle mode says, hey, let's going to assume that threats can happen outside of that, but once an attacker get in or cross the moat, so we are essentially done, right? So because now Gartner, this North American multinational IT consulting firm, their clients demand to have now security built in, not as a set of layers, they come up with this, so their analysts come with this solution called zero trust policy, which the TLDR is that now by constantly taking verification and validate whoever get in here and run the principle of least privilege, or by following that principle and continuously monitoring the device, and if any attackers get in here, by split the network, by microsegmentate the network, and in each one of those networks, define is the multi-factor authentication. This is a way of how now you can, based on this model, improve that security. There are also now another challenge, especially when you are, because now the cost of all of this, so the cost of developing has shrink and has reduced a lot. It has been more compelling to companies to put all of their business assets in these 3 cloud vendor providers, perhaps other ones. That is Amazon, Firebase, and Amazon Firebase and Azure, where the idea is that how you now deal with the deal with the network accessibility and network security. Okay, so this is the reason why this particular architecture model kicks in, at least for these cloud providers. Cloudflare is one of them. So they have now illustrated on their website that this model of how you can now build this kind of applications called the SASE model, despite it is SASE name, it stands for Secure Access Service Edge, where their idea or the techniques that is used to guarantee that is, hey, now let's follow the zero trust policy model. Let's go to secure the web gateway. The TLDR is that it's going to inspect that any package that pass here and do a URL filtering if that user can have access to our network. Follow the CASB, which is Cloud Access Secure Cloud Access Service Broker, where it's pretty much like the physical firm. When you need to hire when you hire a physical firm for surveillance, foot patrols, and verification, but now here it follows certain principles, which is data protection, threat security, observability or visibility, and compliance. And this is when now compliance actually is part of the entire development process. So let's take a look at this. This is the IT, and This is describing as CASB, exactly what CASB is. Cloud Access Security Broker, my bad. Cloud Access Security Brokers, okay. And there you got it. So this is the 4 pillar of CASB, okay. So threat protections, visibility, data security, and compliance. And here on the compliance is where we look at these regulations that we as a software developer, especially if you're building for whether if you're building for a CEO, or if you're as the CEO, you're building for this kind of companies, or you're building this software to satisfy some market niche, is that you need to deal is with SOC, which is System Organizations Control, SOC 2, all right. Why are you translating to Spanish? No, give me to SOC 2, exactly, in English, right? It's a standard to ensure service providers securely manage client data. That's what is this. It's a standard to ensure that service providers, any company, whoever made it is, any service provider securely manage client data. So this SOC, that stands for System and Organizations Control, System and Organizations Control, is conducted by the IACPA, which is American Institute Certified of Public Accountant. Also the ISO ISC 27001, which is for Information System Management, Information Security Management Systems. That stands for this. Okay. So, oh my God, English. All right. So Information Security Management System. Also the quality management, or the quality management systems, known as the QMS, okay? Quality management systems. This is from ISO 9001, and some compliance industries, some industry-specific compliance, such as HIPAA for healthcare, or FedRAMP for any cloud providers for any cloud providers to guarantee is the FedRAMP is for the FedRAMP certification. This is a program Exactly. So this is a program, the FedRAMP, okay, the Federal Risk and Authorization Programs, is a government-wide programs that provide a standard approach to security and risk. Look at this. This is a standard provided by the government, the U.S. government, to a standardized approach to security, risk asset, authorization, and continuous monitoring, authorization, risk assets, risk assessment, and security for cloud products and services. And I think this is quite interesting. They're not enforcing that. This is just a standard, all right? And this is quite interesting, because for any unregulated market, it can be an opportunity and a devastating area, right? Absolutely. But this is FedRAMP, right? This Federal Risk Asset Management, Federal Risk Authorization Management Program, where the idea here is to, provide now a standard made by the government, the U.S. government, to approach security, risk asset uh, risk asset assessment, authorizations, and continuous monitoring for cloud product and services. That is huge. Now, there are also, of course, other compliance, more specific to, for example, the bank. The Swiss bank is one of them, among other stuff. But the point of this is to understand that, right? So, going back to what we really care about here, which is how we now is move on to the next topic in testing. All right, if you follow the testing spectrum, and that is component testing. So the TLDR is that we look at testing library, which is now a nice little wrapper around famous UI frameworks like Angular, Vue, React, Svelte, you name it. They expose not only is query methods for your DOM elements, but also convenient user interactions, such as typing or key up, right? So we look at how can we create our components for testing here. Also the discipline of writing our tests by defining is the setup and then the testing logic and ultimately the assertion, okay? There of course are other testing methods, but at least this is the most widespread way of writing your tests. And because when you're testing your React component specifically in this course, at some point, because there are JavaScript functions and they need to communicate with external services or with external models, how you can now test models that now are not part of that particular file, okay? So the TLDR of this is for this specific use case, like Redux, all right? You want us to recreate the state for that. And here's when the philosophical and more practical approach kicks in, which is anytime that you need to mock is third-party services, all right, that you own or code that you own that is not present in that file, you recreate that, period. In our case, because Redux is something that we own, we recreate that state. And that's why we look and apply the testing provider concept here, which stands for, hey, let's go into now is provide all the necessary library code models or states that this component needs to be as a way to make that work as expected. So far, so good, because now we have is this particular pattern when it comes to solve this issue of writing on React components when they need to use is when we need to is test is Redux, for example. And here's where now it opens up a new world. Again, go beyond the scope of today's video. I'm just gonna make it quick. And that is, hey, how can we now create applications, enterprise UI applications, in a way that it make it easy for us to test? Not only that, but also that allow us the ability to now split the concern here. So anytime we need to jump into a new framework or a new technology, we need to update to a new JavaScript trends, or when the language updates, how can we now make that possible, right? And this is when stuff like architecture kicks in, clean architecture and the hexagon architecture. Now, because of that, all right, since the idea here is to at least describe this type of architecture because again, this is something that goes beyond the scope of this course. It's important to understand them as a way to know how you can deal those scenarios, right? So then we look at how can we define our accessibility by following is or by using this particular library that use the known checks of accessibility, and the way of how can we define is code coverage. And what code coverage is, that is, it tells you how much it tells you how much of your source code is tests, but it doesn't tell you that those tests that you wrote or any other developers wrote actually now give you confidence about that, right? For all the things that I already mentioned. The TLDR is that, hey, are you testing the right use cases? And also, are you not mocking everything that this component needs to? Because the more you mock your test, the less confident it is. And don't try to cheat that, because that's divorced from the reality. So here is also why we look at mock and spies. What is the difference between mock and spies? So mock is just replace the implementation of a function, and spy is the same but for a property on an object. Okay. So what are the most common use cases when you want to use for mocking your application? Glad you asked. If you don't, doesn't matter. It's for timers, things that you don't control. Any code that you don't control, you want to mock that. So for example, is, hey, timers, randomness, mat.random, for example, any way of sorting elements in a random way in your UI. And the other is the API calls. So on the API calls, which is something that I'm going to look at later on in today, but in a different video, is to how can we now write our integration test, or this, how can we mock our server as a way to guarantee that by the time that we get that value, we can now do that. This is quite interesting, quite compelling as well. And okay, and that leads us to now finally what is relevant in today's video, which is the Playwright. And what Playwright is, this E2E testing. This is kind of the stuff that I'm excited about it. If you're gonna work for these big companies, let's say financial sector and all that kind of stuff, it's great to at least know what they're doing, how they're doing that kind of stuff, and what are the things they have now inherit that work for them. But for new companies or for startups, they actually can outperform them. But in any case, here we are, right, with the Playwright. So, or at least this integration testing with Playwright. So understand now Playwright and what it is, which is now provide you is the E2E test. So you can now have a lot of confidence that your feature will work as close as the real end user. Okay. So this is the value proposition of testing, is that, hey, your stuff won't break behind your back, right? So with integration testing in Playwright, okay, Steve mentioned is a couple examples. So a year ago, Steve rushed into build out of this admin dashboard for managing a whole bunch of stuff for a SaaS product. So previously, because we want to add a user you feel a send this ticket and someone from engineering did it. This is not a scalable. There is a cap of how many customers. Mm, mm. There is a cap of how many customers you can onboard when you do stuff manually. Okay, absolutely. This is interesting. They were building is the admin dashboard for managing a whole bunch of stuff for a SaaS product, and the cloud team was terrible. So they choose to do one of those mad dashes, carreras frenéticas en español. And then the API came late. We had stuff and integration. Yeah, we have stuff and integration was hard. And also figure out that design was changing. This is also this is one of the things that the developers need to adapt, you know? Okay, so we're now building the UI and the UI, yeah, we're building is the UI. And then the API came late. We have now stuff and integration to do that was hard and figuring out. And also the design was changing. So not only the initial work is changing, but also integrating to the backend is something that is quite hard to wire them up. So did we write? No, did we wrote? Oh, did we write a great test? No, because we didn't have the full shape of things yet. So how can we rapidly get some sanity around this code base? And here, we're gonna answer this question. How can we rapidly get some sanity around these code bases? Here we're going to look at the 20% of stuff that will make your life much more easy and then kind of build from there. I feel a few really good integration tests, if they fail, they won't give you much detail about it, why they fail, because they're far from implementation. That's one of the problem with this integration testing. And they are very brittle. But a really few browser-based integration will give you at least, but a really few browser integration will give you at least browser-based integration that everything works, not a lot of insight when it doesn't, but it gives you a lot of confidence that your app works the way you want. Okay. So, okay, not a lot of insights when it doesn't, but it gives you a lot of confidence that your app works the way you want. Okay. So despite that a lot of people actually is following is this trend of the trend of the trends of test-driven development. Now let's get into this. But this is something that we're going to find a lot in development, but a lot. And you must organize. You must have a particular system to help you cope with that. So, in any case, let's get into this, right? Let's definitely get into this. Okay. So, this is Playwright, okay? We're looking here this integration testing, okay?
We have a second repo for this. Purposely, these are not built in React. These are built in Svelte, mostly to point to, like, this should not be a framework-specific course, despite my case study on my own Redux issue earlier. But like, there's a bunch of just apps where we can drive around. Because like, theoretically, this is like, your user does not care whether or not you're using Svelte or Vue or Angular or Backbone or jQuery or React or what have you.
Exactly.
Going to a website, like half the internet is probably still WordPress and jQuery, to be honest, despite what you have. And so you can go. And so one of the ways unique to check it out real quick. So we got this. Basically, what it will do is it will pull down all the browsers. So we will go ahead and we will get started here. How to install Playwright? npm init Playwright latest. Again, I use npm normally, so that'll do it as well. But here we got it. We're going to do npm init. That's one of those commands which you run once in a repo, and then good luck trying to remember. For pull down all the browsers, so we will go ahead and we will get started here. How to install Playwright? npm init Playwright latest. Again, I use npm normally, so that'll do it as well. But here we got it.
So let's get into this. Get started. We're going to install this.
Which you run once in a repo, and then good luck trying to remember. For a lot of you, it will start to ask you a bunch of questions on where you want things to go. I don't like EE. I like this question. Add a GitHub Actions workflow? Don't mind if I do, right? Like, absolutely. Install the Playwright browsers? That seems like I need it. Now, I probably have it in my cache, so that probably went way faster for me, but that's okay. One thing you notice, and I just say this in case you have a need for it, it can go on, like, you can go on the internet and do things too, right? It can go to any URL.
I'm going to install now.
So if you wanted, automate a browser, do things.
This one, you got it.
And when we see some of the other tooling, you'll see why that could be useful for all sorts.
All right, and now that we install is this Playwright, okay, that allows us to run browser tests, browser-based tests, using its Chromium WebKit and Firefox, where the test on Windows, Linux, and macOS, you can test on Windows, Linux, macOS locally or on a CI, right? Headless or headed with native mobile emulation of Google Chrome and Android Mobile Safari. But all of this is just for the web. If you want to do that for native or for React Native application or for mobile applications, there are some alternatives out there that allow you to, well, kind of do that as you go and move, right? So choose between TypeScript and JavaScript. Default is TypeScript. Name your test folder. Default it tests to E2E if you already have test folder in your project. Exactly. It checks for the test folder and adds a GitHub Actions workflow that easily run tests on CI. This is quite convenient. It's like, hey, do you want me to write this? Interesting. It say, hey, do you want me to do this?
Parts of this workflow? Don't mind if I do, right? Like, absolutely.
Where to put your end-to-end test? I hear it under the test folder. Okay. Do you want me to write your GitHub Actions workflow? Don't mind if I do.
Absolutely.
In my case, I said yes. All right. Install Playwright's browsers can be done via manually. And now he's going to install all of this Playwright browser.
Seems like I need it. Now I probably have it in my cache, so that probably went way faster for me. But that's okay. One thing you notice, and I just say this in case you have.
And that is installed is
it can go on the internet and do things too, right? It can go to any URL you give it. So if you wanted,
exactly.
Browser, do things.
Yeah, overriding it.
Some of the other tooling, you'll see why that could be useful for all sorts of terrible reasons. So some things that I would like to call out that I think are super.
Exactly. Now is downloading is Chromium, Firefox WebKit, and Headless. It's installing all of these different browsers. Playwright that is actually handled that.
You do get this page object passed in, right? But it's really interesting, like how you find stuff on the page.
So now let's take a look and explore is at least this demo test example here. I think it's this one. It's this one, right?
Hopefully has the same syntax or API as.
Where you say, hey, the test has title.
So for instance, like if you're like, hey, it was really great, Steve, that we talked about some of the nuances of component testing and we discovered the laughs that we had along the way. Like I don't have that many component tests, to be totally honest with you. partially because I didn't like enzyme as much, right? Like, there's also reasons. I do think that, like, for me, it's unit tests and Playwright tests predominantly, right? And so, like, I think some other people have a lot of component tests. I'm kind of like scooped in the middle, where I've got the unit tests in that like spectrum, and I've got these. But like, that's just my taste, and like, I don't want to.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't want to enforce my taste on you, which I've definitely been doing. But like, it's fine. But generally speaking, I like this as well. But the trade-off is slower, and when it breaks, you don't get a lot of like, you're not going to get anything logged to the console with the diff of the snapshot and why it's broken, right? Like, you can figure it out, but like, it's going to be a little bit different. But the important part that I bring up here is it looks, other than some awaits, the idea that there are methods here instead of having to use like user event or fire event. You can't actually fire events because this is truly you are driving a browser like a customer. You have to almost do this stuff like we're building up something like this. And you click on something as a method based. So there's like little nuances here, but generally speaking, super powerful for kind of spinning up. So let's go ahead and let's do npx
integration playtime
test. Let's hope that I picked the right repo and don't embarrass myself once again. Let's put in Chromium, WebKit, and all those things, and it shows me a report. Test. Let's hope that I picked the right.
Okay, so now that I'm here, I just want to explore now git remote, so you can see, yeah, just to follow that. You can see this. Yeah, help me here. Enterprise here. You got it. No, but I want to show is even the warp. I want to show is warp window application capture. Okay, like warp. That's right. There you get it. Of course, you're not gonna see me. Is there you got it. This is a warp, but I need to put myself is here, bam, and bam. Okay, I need to put myself is here. So now, that's right. There you got it. Okay. Excellent. So you can see this. There you got it. So yeah, this is git remote. Holy moly, no, don't hallucinate. So once I get into the repo, now that I'm here, I want to run Playwright. No, I want to check is which branch am I right now? Git remote origin get URL. I think it is. I think it needs to be done like this. Exactly, get URL of origin. Okay, I'm actually is not connecting to Steve Kenney, but I don't want to do that. In fact, I want to is now make my own or create is a fork for that. Right? I want to create now a fork for that. Question, do I have that? Integration testing here. Let me inspect that. Integration. Repo. Okay, no, I don't have that. Okay, no problem at all. So okay, so what I can do is to say, hey, git init. All right, and this time I say git log. How if I want to okay, I want to now remove in a forced way everything related to Git folders. Okay, in Git, if I say Git log, it is with me, that's right. And if I say Git init, alright, it will create now a master and say Git log. Your current branch master does not have any commit yet, which is great. And now it is time for us to say, hey, Git status. Okay, this is now the enterprise UI development. Okay, and here we say, hey, Git commit with a message. Let's say, hey, this is the first commit. Okay, this is the first commit. Oh, because we haven't tracked all of them. And now we do git commit, say that's right. And then we want to now push this to our own branch here. Let's get into this. We're going to create now this branch. Okay, where I want to explore that. This is the repo, new one. This is now the E2E testing with Playwright, integration, and E2E testing Playwright. Okay, Playwright. It's a Playwright. Okay. Go base to test E2E with Playwright. Okay, I think it's Playwright. I write it good. Exactly, Playwright. And it's gonna make this public. Okay. And no, this is not. Exactly. All right. So let's going to push now this branch there. I want to add now here is that particular course, which is there you got it. And that is looking at cursor. Okay. G command V. You got it. Shift Shift command V, and there you go. Okay. Here we say, hey, git status here, git add everything, git commit update ref link, update ref course link, right? And there you got it. Okay, cool. Now let me actually now push all of these changes to the particular branch. Nope. There you got it. All right. Bam. It is success. It is a success. Okay. Good. 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 Now,
Rebo, don't embarrass me.
if we want to actually run that test, say npnx playwright test. So playwright test, and I want to run that particular test. Okay. It say, hey, error, no test found. Make sure that the arguments are regular expression matching files like this. That's quite interesting. What about this? If I say this one, it's still telling me that. So if I say npm playwright test, npnx, it means that, hey, I want you to execute this node command, or that node without a test. That's right. It's like, hey, I want you to the npnx is running a binary, is running the command node, is execute node commands, whether it is locally if they have that, or remotely without installing that package globally, right? Now this is playwright and test. When we run this, it now is using 6 worker. In other words, this is quite interesting. This is a very, very, very interesting. This is on WebKit, okay? And then it launch this as it is. Serving HTML report at this particular server. And now it tells you, it's like, hey, I run this on Chromium, I'll run this on Firefox, and also on WebKit, okay? And all of this give me is the same error. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Say navigate into / waiting until load. Page should navigate cannot navigate to invalid URL. Yeah, but when things don't work, is kind of like what? Error page goes to protocol error, invalid URL. In the case of Firefox, visit the Pokemon page and have search, cannot navigate to invalid URL, navigate to Pokemon search, like this. But as you can see, this is what it's doing behind the scenes. It's spinning up different browsers, Chromium, Firefox, and Safari, okay? And that is pretty interesting.
So once again, let's go to Chromium, WebKit, and all those things, and it shows me.
So of course, my test failed. All right, because I don't have that stuff setting up properly. Because for example, here in Pokemon Go, it's like, hey, that won't work. There's nothing, there's no Pokemon Go and stuff like that. So I just need to is run the test demo to do app, right? In this case. Not all of them. It say, hey, no test found. Make sure the arguments are regular expressions and all that kind of stuff. So if I say npm Playwright, my spec, some spec, and head, project head WebKit. Well, I can say is that. It doesn't recognize that. I think it's because I have this nested on test examples demo app, which is what I want you to run. Demo to do app spec .ts, right? And it say, hey, I couldn't find any of that test that you described with.
Right, and the report is an HTML file.
But this is the example test.
npx, npx, Playwright, test. Let's hope I picked the right repo and don't embarrass myself once again. Let's put in Chromium, WebKit, and all those things, and it shows me a report. Right.
In this case, it's test example. But if I run this, because if I run test, it will run that on the entire it will run that on the entire test. Pokemon Sir, an example spec text. Oh, okay. But the test example is skip the test example. That's interesting. It skip the test example. Okay. So let's get into this and say Pokemon search exam. Under the test is example test spec. Example spec.ts, right? And that is when you generate the report. So if you say, hey, npx Playwright show report, here we got of that, right? As a title, and it navigate through all of that. Okay, cool.
import as an HTML file. Let's go run that as well. Cool, and you can see all the different tests. It tests like, do you have a title? And I can see everything in here as well. And this is really not all that interesting. It shows you everything, so on and so forth. What I would like to bring your attention to is there are ways you can do everything if you don't have VS Code, but like I haven't walked around the room. Almost. Is anyone not using VS Code? All right, cool. There is a plugin. You don't need it. That does that kind of test filtering that we saw before, where I can run a given test. It also has a hotkey, which is command semicolon.
Oh, exactly. There is a nice integration with this. There's a nice integration with this. Say now plugins here. Playwright setup. Say Playwright setup. Okay. And this is now the plugins. And here we're going to install that plugin as is. So let's go to extension. And install is the Playwright. Right? Playwright. No. There you got it. Okay. A Visual Studio Code extension which allow to find Playwright. This is a snippet. Okay. Interesting. And what's going to install is this one. You can install Playwright here. Okay. And there is now a convenient stuff here. Oh, because we installed that is here. Question: how can we look at that? Testing. All right. And here on testing, we say, hey, for example, let's go to our test file here. That's right. In our test, we can say, hey, I want you to now run this test. You're gonna run this, and actually everything passed. You can also now look at this and say pick recorder now, or reveal output, which is part of the tool of Playwright, or show now a browser, right? One worker. And when you run this, now it will launch a browser, a Chromium browser here. Okay, that's quite interesting and wild. Let me see if you can see that. No, you're not able to see that because you need to see my screen. But in any case, it launched that particular browser here and navigate to that. The cool part of this is that you can also now pick you can query elements here. How so? So by going into and say pick locator, and this is how you can actually get the proper and the proper, that is fantastic. And the proper here, so you get that, right? So once you, for example, get that here, it will show you this and get by role link name docs. So it actually gives you that, and then you can now is put it here, right? So it has a title, and then you say, hey, get role by link, okay, and assign that to a, let's say, link title, okay. Get role, you need to import that, of course, here. Not sure if that get by role comes from here, but I think this is something that you can get from your library. Oh, unless you do this. Okay, say page.getRoleById, link title, right? And we want to expect a way for the page, expect a title to contain a substring like this, and a way to expect the page to have a title, all right? Or to have a button, to have a title here. This is another thing you can do that match is docs, right? Or you can say is that, hey, that this link title, okay, that link title here, say title, or inner text, to be, say to be a docs, right? To be a docs. So when you run this test again without the browser, okay, I don't need the browser right now. You want to run this test, the title, and say, hey, this to be expected docs, receive a function inner text. Oh, it makes sense. And this return is a promise of that string. Okay, so when you run now your test again, you should have that. It say, hey, locator inner text, test ended, call log, waiting for get roll by. Oh, because we need to wait for this. That's right. Wait for this. And then it say error locator in the text test ended, call log waiting for get roll by link dot docs. Okay. Or you can say is that, hey, is this link title here to access, you know, to access or to have text of docs, you know. and now it passed as expected, right? But hey, is this link have the text called docs, right? Yeah, it is, because we already get that. I mean, this quite be redundant, but the point of this is that you want to actually double check, for example, if that have that, right? All of these two texts are now wrappers that come from the spec from Playwright, where they provide you also a nice little wrapper of the most common operation that you can do when running your tests. But again, this is quite interesting, right? This is quite interesting in how you can now write this particular kind of test. So that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.